What is going on, everybody, tonight on this Friday night? And I've got a new special guest in here. This is your recent U.S. Open champion, Mr. Josh Bertrand. Josh, welcome to the Baitman stream.
Hey man, it's a big honor. You got a real cool deal you got going on here, so I'm just thankful to be on.
Man, I appreciate that. I'm just a small guy in a huge plethora sea of fishing podcasts and fishing streams, and been doing it for a while. And I've really got off my horse lately and started getting some really good guests. And I'm honored that when I tagged you on Instagram, said, "Come on, Josh, let's do it," and you're like, "Dude, anytime." So that made me feel really good.
Oh, of course, man. Yeah, no, it's awesome. I can see behind you. You're a fishing junkie, tackle junkie. I'm the same way, dude. My garage looks the same as yours, as probably most of the same listeners too, man. So happy to come on, talk some fishing, and yeah, things are really slowing down for me finally. So like, it's great to have time to hang out, chill, and talk fishing.
Yeah, it must be nice to win all that money right here before Christmas.
Yeah. I guess it is good timing. It's always good timing to win money, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, right before the holidays at the end of the year, it's definitely the best time for sure.
Someone just dropped a comment. I knew this was going to happen sometime during the stream. It says, Kevin, did you see the smallmouth caught on Erie? 10.15. If I got one that big, I would hang it up. Can't top that. Dude, that's a giant smallmouth. I mean, a 6-pound smallmouth's a giant, but I can't imagine catching a 10.
To me, it seems like it came out of nowhere too, right? I mean, like, Erie's obviously one of the top lakes in the country, and now's the time to do it, but I don't know. You just never expect someone to catch an 11-pound smallmouth.
Yeah, dude,
it would always come out of nowhere.
That's crazy. So, give us a little bit of background on yourself, Josh. I know you're a kind of a West Coast, but you're not really on the coast. You're in Arizona, so you're a Western angler. And how did you, what got you into bass fishing? And you said you were a tackle junkie. I see behind you all kinds of Berkeley stuff, so you're loaded up on them. Just give us a little bit of background and your history to the point you're at now.
Yeah, man. I got really into bass fishing probably at about 12 years old. Living here in Arizona, I fished since I was out of diapers. I had trout fishing and stuff like that in the Northeast. We moved as a family to Arizona when I was 8 or 9 years old, and like 12, I really got into bass fishing. We'd go with my dad and brother every weekend, one day every weekend to these local lakes. We had an aluminum boat and just fell in love with it. Started fishing tournaments at probably 15 and just did the whole the old school climbing the ladder as far as the tournament thing goes, right? You fish club, you fish team tournaments, federation, you start joining some regional pro-ams, fish the opens, the Bassmaster Opens a couple years. In my second year doing that, made the elites. That was in 2012. Fished the elites for 6 years, jumped over to the Bass Pro Tour, been doing that for 4 years, so already feeling like an old man. I've been doing it full-time tournaments for about 10 years, over 10 years now, and I still do some guiding too, to stay busy during the off season. Here in Arizona, it's so nice, right? Like, I mean, the weather's finally getting good, and the fishing stays good here all fall and winter, so I do a lot of guiding in the off season, stuff like that.
Dude, that's pretty awesome. Hopefully, someone said it had a little echo. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. And is the echo on my end?
Yeah, they said Josh might have an echo. I had a feeling because I accidentally swapped my mic over to a different mic, and it was probably.
I think whatever you just did actually took the echo out of my headphones, so hopefully it did the same for the listeners.
Yeah, before the stream, dude, the Baitman stream. One thing I gotta warn you: if anything's supposed to go right, chances are it usually doesn't. So, but that makes it real. I mean, your story is very similar to so many guys. Go fishing with your dad, your grandpa, start off with a little aluminum boat or whatnot, and then you just get that. It's like a drug, man. Like Rick Clunn once said, the best part of bass fishing is that nanosecond between when you get a bite and you set the hook, whether it's a 6-incher or a 10-pounder. And from when I was 6 years old to now, I still get that feeling every time I feel a thump.
That's just it. That's the truth. Yeah, I went out yesterday and fished for fun in rain and hail, which is hard to believe it actually did that in Arizona in November, but it did, just for that. So yeah, I totally agree, man. And yeah, it's everyone's got their own different path to in tournament fishing to get to wherever they are, but it's a little different being out west because it's definitely I don't want to say it's harder, but it's just different, right? Because you have the lakes are further away. It's just a little bit of a different deal. And when I first started traveling back east, there was quite the learning curve, right? I mean, we have some diversity in our lakes, but we don't have a lot of grass. We don't have any tidal fishing, stuff like that. So, kind of, it's a little bit different for the guys coming from out here for sure.
Yeah, so somebody asked the question, how do you commute to work from Arizona? It's from Criddle Gravy. He's a channel member. Thank you guys to all the channel members in here. So I guess when he says commute to work, are you driving to Arizona, or do you leave your rig, somewhere centrally located? I know a lot of West Coast guys do that. They'll leave the rig with somebody and then fly home for a little bit and then fly back.
Yeah, so for me, I do a kind of a hybrid of both. I don't necessarily love to drive. I don't hate the driving, but I love to have my rig at home because I like to be able to work on it, man, and go fishing and stuff, right? So, it's inevitable every single time I'm going to leave my rig after a tournament and fly home. It's going to dump pouring rain the last day of the tournament, and everything's going to get wet, and then I have to lock everything up, cover the boat, leave it covered up, locked up somewhere for like 2 weeks while it just molds and gets all nasty. And then I come back to it. There's mold everywhere. My tackle's everywhere. Nothing's organized. My truck's a mess. And that's part of the gig. And I do that a lot. But if I do have the choice to drive home, I'm going to do it. For me, if I've got 2 weeks or more, that's kind of the amount of time I need to make it justifiable to drive. If it's less than 2 weeks, it's not worth driving from anywhere. The closest I ever am would be like Oklahoma or Texas, which is still a good, 15, 18 hours, depending on where you're at.
Yeah, so that drive across West Texas is pretty boring. I've done that before.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you're on the 10 or the 20 or what, man. It stinks, dude. So it is what it is. It still beats driving through the traffic in the Northeast probably because you're going 80, but it still is super boring. And, man, with gas prices too, being up this year, it maybe costs more money. But, yeah, so I do a little bit of both. But it's funny, man. I swear every single time I'm gonna fly home, I leave my rig. It's going to rain right before, and I'm going to have fur growing on all my rods and reels by the time I come back to them.
Well, I got a place here if you ever need to store a boat in between tournaments. I've done it. I've done it for Skeet Reese one time and a couple other guys, and they were happy. But
thanks, man.
Let's talk about that U.S. Open a little bit. That's a historic tournament, and I feel like I would love to see more media coverage on it than it really happens. I think everybody knows it's a big tournament that's in the industry, but to the guys that are maybe new to the sport or whatnot, they don't understand that tournament's been around for a long time, and a who's who of guys have fished it and who's who of guys have won it, and you got to put your name there on the list of guys that's won that thing. So how explain to me? I noticed you caught all smallmouth, mostly smallmouth. What was the technique, and just fill us in on that.
Yeah, it is a pretty unique, special tournament because there's one every year, right? It's the fact that there's only one every year. There aren't as many winners as like a tour tournament, right? Like there's 8, 7, 8, 9 tour tournaments in every tour every year, so there's more winners. But for the U.S. Open, you go to that thing and you don't do well. You got to wait a whole year to do it again, right? So there's so many different aspects that make it cool. For a little bit of background for any listeners that aren't super familiar with it, it's been at Lake Mead for the past 40 years since its inception. And I believe, just like on my podcast, I just throw stuff out there without doing any research, and hope something sticks. But yeah. I think it was the highest paying tournament ever when at the time when it started. It paid more than the Classic, paid more than any other tournament.
Yes. As far as I know, it paid more than, the All American always was the highest paid before the Classic, but I do know at one time I read the U.S. Open was the biggest or highest paying tournament for first place finisher, even more than the Classic.
Right on. So, I mean, it started with a bang, and it was in a unique place because Lake Mead is like, if you ever think of Western fishing and you think of clear water and just tough fishing, Lake Mead is the epitome of that. I mean, it is one of the toughest lakes in the country. The fish are small. The lake is massive. It's windy a lot, and it's so big it gets extremely rough. I mean, that so many boats have sunk at that lake. It's such a nasty lake when it's windy. It's got a mix of smallies and largemouth. It's just a really tough fishery, but it's a pretty cool battleground for a tournament because, it's the water level's changing every year. So you do good off one spot one year, and then the next year it's either way too deep or high and dry. So unique lake. And it's right next to Vegas. So you got the whole gambling mentality right there. I mean, guys are staying when we go to Mead, we stay at a casino and park our trucks and boats on the roof of a parking garage. Yeah,
that's
man.
Awesome.
So and there's been plenty of guys that maybe went a little too hard and didn't make takeoff the next morning or whatever. It's happened. There's a lot of stories like that from that tournament. But
I would imagine there's some really good post-tournament and pre-tournament U.S. Open stores involving, poker tables, blackjack tables, and what other kind of adventures there's out there.
So many, dude. I mean, every year there's like one guy that you end up you're walking through the casino to get to your boat, at 3-4 a.m. and there's a dude that's been up all night playing, and he's like supposed to be getting up to fish, and he hasn't gone to bed yet, dude. So that doesn't happen a lot, but it's happened, and it's just the whole tournament's really unique. And this year the water got so low at Mead that they had to move it over to Lake Mojave. And Mead's still big. It's still got a lot of water. But anyone that's watched the news.
Oh, yeah, it's super low.
You see that the lake is at record low levels. It's really the watershed from the Colorado Rockies. So they need a bunch of snow in the Rockies and a bunch of snow melt to fill this thing up. You got Lake Powell up above it on the same chain. It's part of the Colorado River. Powell is also low. And these are the two big flood control lakes at the top of the whole chain. So anyways, there's like no ramps left at Lake Mead. There used to be 4, 5, 6 big flourishing marinas, boat ramps, scattered around the whole lake. And now there's one marina that has a 2-lane pipe mat boat ramp for the whole city of Las Vegas and anyone else that wants to come launch their boat on that lake. So it's kind of it's a tough deal. You can't hold a 200 to 250 boat tournament on a 2-lane ramp when also the entire city of Las Vegas is trying to use that ramp, right? So they had to move it. Yeah, Bill Egan, the tournament director for One Bass, I mean, he got in front of it. He, 6 months before the tournament announced, hey, it's going to be at Lake Mojave this year. So Mojave is just the next lake down on the chain. You got Lake Mead, a dam, the Hoover Dam, and right below the Hoover Dam is Lake Mojave. And Mojave is it's not as big as Mead, but it's big. It's probably, I've been saying 50 miles long. Again, just throwing numbers out there, but roughly 50. It's somewhere between 40 and 60 miles long anyway. So we'll say 50.
It's still a pretty big body of water.
It's a good sized lake. It's fairly narrow. There's one wide basin that gets, again, extremely rough. That lake is notoriously windy. And then you got current running through it all the time. So it's like I compare it to Kentucky Lake because a lot of those guys haven't been to Kentucky. But as far as the weather, the rough water goes, like when you get the wind blowing against the current,
oh man,
it just stacks the waves and you got nowhere to go but up and down, right? So it's very similar to, like, it's really long and straight, and when you get the wind against the current, it's a nightmare. But really clear water. Lots of big smallmouth, unlike Lake Mead, and lots of big largemouth too. It's the same water that's coming out of Mead, and all the same species live in it. But the big difference is they keep Mojave at a pretty full water level,
right?
And to me, that's the whole difference. I mean, these fish have a good habitat to live in all year long. Whereas, like, if you go up to Mead, they don't know where their house is going to be at tomorrow, right? They gotta be on the move constantly. It's a hard life for a bass, and just literally having that constant water level, the weights are twice as high at Mojave as they are at Meade.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that about Kentucky Lake and the current and wind. And man, I live here, and I'm telling you, it's always funny when people are like, "Oh man, you got Erie and all these places up north. It's so rough." I'm like, man, when that wind starts blowing out of the south and that current's running, it's bad. Like, it's just the way our lake bottlenecks up in sections. You know, it's not super wide. It's not the widest lake in the world, and it is kind of narrow. And when that current wind against each other, I don't care if you had a 26-foot bass boat, it's still gonna be it's gonna be rough on you.
Oh, and those waves stack so tight on
Yeah.
that lake, right? And it's the same way at Mojave. That's like you might have a 6-foot wave at Lake Erie, but it's spaced out to where you can actually get down and surf it. When those waves are stacked tight and they're 6 feet tall, like you literally feel like you're gonna flip when you're trying to climb over one.
It separates the good boat drivers from the bad ones really quickly.
I bet. I bet.
So you fish at Mojave. Did you specifically target smallmouth, and what did you target them with?
Yeah, so for me, I went into practice trying to keep an open mind. I had done, I had no experience at the lake, actually, believe it or not. There had never been a lot of tournaments there, and it's like 5 hours from my house. So I haven't spent much time there. I went for 2 days in July to check it out, just so I knew what I'd be looking at when I came back. And I caught them deep pretty good. Caught a couple shallow, but I caught them deep, and I was like, wow, if they'll stay out here, I could do pretty well doing this maybe. And I came back, and I made a really concerted effort to go back and forth from shallow to deep. That way I wouldn't get totally stuck doing just one thing. Like if you go all in practice on something and it ends up changing in the tournament or the conditions don't allow you to do it, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So for me, even though I really felt like I could catch them good deep, I need to go back and forth. I need to have shallow fish just in case for whatever reason. And I did. And I did better out deep, but I caught enough up shallow where I felt like I got that in my back pocket, mainly smallmouth. I didn't catch a lot of largemouth all week long. The water was falling just a little bit, just a normal drawdown. They do about 10 feet every year out there. And that pulled a lot of the largemouth out of the habitat they were in. So it was a smallmouth deal for me and most others. When the tournament came around, I caught them. I started deep and it was working well, so I stayed deep. Caught them pretty much all of them on a drop shot on the Berkeley flatworm, just like so many guys use in all the northern tournaments. I mean, everyone talks about the flatworm. It's the real deal. I mean, they were like gold. It's taking a little longer for that thing to get really popular out west because there's so many hand pour style baits, and these dudes have been drop shotting forever out there, and they got their own stuff they like to drop shot. But the fact that this was so smallmouth centric, it really like made that flatworm shine. The scent in it works really good on largemouth, but for whatever reason, it's like crazy for smallmouth, as y'all know. So it was
there's been no shortage of people wanting flatworms in the last 2 years. Like, I literally didn't think Berkeley could make enough flatworms. And I'm glad because now you can actually get some and people aren't having to pay. Dude, I saw guys paying like $50, $60, $70 a pack. I got a friend, and he's got a lot of money. And I don't mean this bad. They came in stock, and he texted me and said, just bought every pack of flatworms Tackle Warehouse had. And I'm like,
how many?
He's like, it was like $1,800. I'm like, I just got whatever they had. And like a week later, there he is on Facebook selling for $20 a pack. He's like, I'm not trying to like rape anybody. I'm like, no, you're not. But he's like, I'm going to keep like 50 packs to myself. And I was like, I got you. Strike while the iron's hot, I guess. But man, they're the real deal. I think you made a good point. On the West Coast, there's a whole lot of guys making those drop shot pours, that hand pour stuff out there. A worm I used to throw here on Kentucky Lake, never talked about it hardly at all. It was a hand pour, it was Upton's. They make that big giant hand pour, that Upton's hand pour. Bass Tricks actually makes, a lot of people know Bass Tricks is, the OG on the hollow belly swim bait. I got one laying around here somewhere, one of my favorite swim baits of all time. But they make some really good drop shot baits. I forgot the name of it. It's like I forgot, but that's about right now. The new owner, all he's making is a drop shot bait in the hollow belly. But there's a lot of really good homemade stuff out there. Do you got one of those homemade guys that you still keep some stuff in the boat or whatnot?
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that I'm willing to try anything, So, and I've got just I used to pour when I was a teenager. Like, I mean, if you fish out here, you've tried it at some point. I love doing it. I did it for like 3 or 4 years and caught a lot of fish on the stuff I poured. But it just kind of the time got short as I got older, and I don't do it anymore, obviously. But yeah, sometimes every now and again, I'll try something if you're on a unique body of water and you need a real unique color or something like that. And it just kind of it depends. I mean, you can get as crazy as you want with it, but the guy that rifles through 12 different colors of worms on a day on a drop shot on these lakes is usually not the guy winning the tournaments. It's the guy that knows what color to throw from the get-go, or has confidence in a handful of colors that's usually catching the fish.
Do you keep it pretty simple with the flatworm, or are you pretty much a green pumpkin or a goby color? And I know a lot of guys do like black. For some reason, I've noticed a lot of guys like that black flatworm.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, in no particular order, brownback, black, green pumpkin, those are my favorite colors. And there's tournaments where I don't think it matters at all, and I'll just go through a bag of one. Might be in the middle of the tournament, and I'll just start using another color because I think it's all about the scent, the profile, and the presentation. But there are times when you really think, I mean, man, if I'm on a school of fish that are eating shad, eating alewives, something like that, I'm going to use the brownback or the smelt color, a bait fish color. And I'll say the brownback has probably won more tournaments than any other. That's the color they've been the hardest to find over the last few years. But green pumpkin, everyone knows what that does, and that's what I caught at Mojave. That's what I used, and the reason for that was, I think a lot of fish were eating little small bluegill and also crawfish, and that color at least got into the range of those particular types of bait. And then the black is that sneaky color that you keep in your back pocket. And I know that was kind of a northern secret for a long time. Those Canada guys and the northeastern guys that were the Great Lakes guys that were really good would keep the black as kind of a secret. And the words got out on that. And for me anyways, I think black works so well when you've got fish that are not hard to trick into biting. A lot of smallmouth are unpressured on certain bodies of water. And the whole key is getting them to see your bait and putting a bait in front of them. And if you got clear water and you have a solid black bait, how much better of a silhouette can you get? They can see it better probably. I'm not a fish. I don't know what colors look like to fish, but that's the best silhouette you can get. And I think they eat it so good because you can see it. It's no different than, fishing in heavy grass. You might have crystal clear water, but if you're punching a bait or throwing a stick worm in heavy grass, black and blue works so well, I think, because that black just stands out amongst the cover.
Yeah, so Sixth Sense makes some black crankbaits, and they're kind of known for having this black magic color, and a lot of people are like, oh, it's cool looking, but does it work? Well, I actually was fishing a lake this year, and it was kind of tough. I wasn't catching a lot of fish, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to tie this on. And I actually started catching them, and the water was really clear, and I feel it's just that silhouette. And they can track it. And if you look at fish in really clear water, you see their backs. They almost look like little dark spots moving around just from the bait fish and all that. And I think that it's an unnaturally natural presentation, whether it's a black hair jig, a black crankbait. It's just burning by it. They see it and they can react. They don't have a chance to like visually look at it and go, oh, I don't know about that. They just see that little black run through and they react to it. So
yeah, I agree.
It's so simple, and I'm going to tell you, my grandpa, he was just a black culprit guy. He was going to throw a black worm on, and dude, the OGs caught so many fish on just colors,
dude,
like that.
In this clear water out here, guys throw black jigs. I'm not all the time and stuff, but I mean, it works at times really well for sure. And it's utilized, but still probably a little underutilized. I know myself, I should probably try to work it in a little more than I do on in largemouth situations too, because it works.
Right. So here's a question from one of our guys on here. This is from Dennis. Thanks for the question, Dennis. Josh, do you hook the flat side up or down on a drop shot?
That's a good question. I had someone ask me that not too long ago too. Personally, I usually do it down. I have the flat side down. It has some pretty cool action when you rig it flat side up on the fall. It looks a little bit different. So I don't know if it makes a difference one way or the other, but I still probably do it down more often than not. But that's a pretty cool little nugget right there, and it's worth trying.
Are you using the 3.6 or the 4.25 flatworm?
I like both. I use the 3.6 more often, but that 4.25 I'll use obviously when the fish are on bigger bait fish, maybe eating perch, something like that, big alewives, or if the water's a little dingier. When we were over at Mille Lacs, a month or two ago, the water's dingy there. It's clear, but it's not clear. You can see 4 or 5 feet. Compared to some Great Lakes, it's not that clear. I was using that big one over there as well. It's worth getting the big ones. It's worth having both, but if I could only have one, it'd still be the 3.6.
That's a good question, because you know what? I'm a power fisherman. I'm a Kentucky Lake dude. I literally just bought a spinning rod like 3 years ago. And
the first one?
Yeah, I owned one before to throw a tube on when I was growing up, and but like drop shot, Nico rig, and Ned rig got so big, and guys, you're having to use a spinner rod to win a tournament here, especially after Brett Hite comes in here and is Nico rigging out on the ledges and catching giant ones.
I remember that.
Well, I guess I better do it. And so I'm learning, and I like drop shotting. I've learned from some guys it's a good way to catch a lot of fish. It's a good way to catch some big fish too. But me, I'm always I'm a robo worm guy, or I've got some flatworms, I've got some newer stuff, but I'm trying to learn when is the best time to use a smaller bait versus 4.5, 5-inch bait, and kind of gotta let the fish tell me. But that was a good question, so I was really interested in that. Got some more questions here too. Benedetto says, Josh, do you have a confidence bait? So what is the one bait, if you're in a tournament anywhere and you need to get a bite, what are you confident about pulling out and catching one on?
Yeah, so you asked for one, I'm going to give you 3, dude.
Oh yeah, we'll take 3.
Why not, right? Well, and so much of it depends on the situation. If I'm covering water, I need to cover water. I don't know right where the fish are at. It's a 1/2 ounce white vibrating jig. Now it's that slobber knocker that I throw from Berkeley, but a white 1/2 ounce vibrating jig is, to me, the bait that you can cover water with, get a big bite on, catch numbers on, have a pretty good hookup to landing ratio. It's like, and it works all year long. So
yeah,
if it's a reaction bait, that's it. If I'm fishing slow, if the cover's really heavy, it's a Berkeley Pit Boss. That green pumpkin is tough to beat. I love the green pumpkin green. That's like my favorite color Pit Boss. Green pumpkin green, 3/8 ounce tungsten weight. Flipping it, pitching it around. That's just a bait that gets bit. Same thing all year long. And then if I'm out deep, it's a drop shot again. Some type of 6-inch straight tail worm. We talked about the flatworm a lot. It works on largemouth, but it really, really works on smallmouth. If I'm largemouth fishing, if I'm on Kentucky Lake or Chickamauga or, some southeastern lake that's got largemouth, I like that bottom hopper, morning dawn color. But a worm over, like a 6-inch worm, when I'm largemouth fishing on the drop shot's more my go-to than a flatworm.
Yeah, so do you feel like a largemouth is more prone to bite a little bit bigger bait on that drop shot?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, like I said, they won't snub a flatworm. But one other thing, too, that I like is those largemouth, a lot of times, they're around cover, whereas the smallmouth often are more open water. So open water, you can nose hook your flatworm. You're using a short, stubby bait, and it works really well with an exposed nose hook. Now, when you're largemouth fishing, a ledge on Kentucky Lake might just be a shell bed. You don't have a lot of cover, but a lot of times you're fishing it through a brush pile. There might be grass around, and you kind of have to Texas rig your drop shot. You have to make your drop shot weedless.
Correct.
You're using a different hook, either a straight shank, a small straight shank, or a small EWG. So, and you take a short, stubby 3.6-inch worm and you start putting a bigger hook in it, you don't have any action. It just doesn't work.
Just kind of just sits there. It doesn't have that nice flow to it. It gets
exactly.
Stiff.
Yeah. So I think that's a big factor. The largemouth might be prone to eat a little bit bigger bait to begin with, but again, that bait just works better in the whole system of using that different hook, fishing it through the cover, stuff like that.
Dude, that was good because that actually answered somebody else's question, was whether you nose hook or Texas rig it, and that's perfect response.
Right on.
Knock that out there. Oh man, got some good comments thrown in here. Nathan Neely fishing says, "What do you think about purple? I heard on one channel that purple is one of the colors they see the best. I'm a big fan of purple. That's kind of my deal. I don't care if it's a soft plastic. I'm a purple chartreuse on a crankbait guy, but I know better when to throw other stuff. But is purple one of those colors? You know, everyone always talks about morning dawn or a purple worm on a drop shot. Is that something you incorporate any, or you just stick to the more the natural colors?
No, definitely, it's great. I mean, man, my boat's purple, so I gotta like it a little bit. The Max Scent package purple, so purple's a favorite color of mine. But it's on a fishing note. I use purple a lot, even in clear water. And this is like out of Aaron Martin's playbook, man. Aaron Martin's is one of the guys that really was so good at picking the right color and the right bait for the right situation. He was so crazy about baits, right? And he would use, like, you would take a day out at Lake Mead in that clear water, and he might use 3 different colors in the day, and he was using the colors depending on what the sky was like, right? Like how much light you had. So he would start the day with a purple, and then maybe go to and just go more natural as the sun came out higher. And then as the sun started to go back down, go back to those darker shades, or maybe had a cloudy day. So long answer to say, I really like purple in dingy water, again, because it gives a good silhouette. But in clear water, too, it gives a good silhouette early in the morning, cloudy day, later in the evening. That's when it really shines. But again, sometimes they're not going to snub it. Even the brightest clear day and clear water, they'll still eat a purple worm. It's a good color.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's an OG deal. The OGs, my dad, grandpa's, is black, some kind of purple, red shad. You don't hear a lot of guys on the Pro Tour talking about caught them on red shad anymore.
I've never caught one on it. Have you?
I was probably about 12 years old last time I used a red shad worm. But dude, my dad, I was over at his house the other day. I'm like, Dad, all these bags of corporate worms, they're all bleeding everywhere, and they're all red shad. He's like, well, I'm keeping them in case I decide to go fishing again. I'm like, all right. I'm like, you know they make other colors. He's like, well, that's the best one that's ever made. I'm like, all right. We all got our own confidence bait. Awesome. John Hudson says he come from TikTok. Can't hear me. That's awesome. So, let's see. I had another good question on here. Someone asked, who was your mentor? Who kind of got you into fishing?
You know, I was pretty lucky. I had a lot of guys that taught me a lot. You know, I would fish with my dad all the time, and he's the best, most supportive dad. But he was not like a big bass fisherman before we started doing this, right? And he's still kind of not. He'll go fishing with me anytime, but like we kind of learned together, and I learned just on my own from reading and watching. So like I had some guys that I really looked up to, that I would just try to get as much knowledge as I could, as far as just, I didn't even know the guys, right? But I would just, like, everything I could read, every video I could watch, magazines,
just soaking in information.
Guys that I really like, of course, Kevin Van Dam, you know, guys like that. But then out west, guys like John Murray, Clifford Perch, guys like that. I wanted to copy their style of fishing because they were so good at, you know, from where I was from. But then, man, as I got into fishing at a young age, and I tried to be respectful and courteous of a lot of the other local fishermen, and tried not to have too much of a cocky attitude,
Yeah.
and I probably did anyways, but like a lot of
That's
teenagers
just
do,
being a
right?
teenager, man.
Yes, but a lot of them just taught me a lot, right? They took me fishing all the time and taught me so much. And dude, I can't even. There's not like one that really stands out more than others because I had a handful of guys that, I mean, I was in their boat 50 times growing up and learned so much from all of them for sure.
Dude, that's awesome, and I think that's very important. For people that are listening to the stream that are younger. Most of my audience is probably 21, or I'll say 25 to 40, 50 years old. But it's something I'll see all these videos on TikTok and Instagram or whatnot, and it's all about got into it with the boat dock owner, or got into it with somebody on the lake, and they get all these views. But at the end of the day, if you want guys to take you fishing and maybe give you a honey hole or some tips, if you behave and you respect them and on the water, obviously things will happen. But for the most part, the OGs see that and like, you know what, this dude here, he's on the water all the time. He's putting in the work. I don't mind helping out a guy like that. And I think that's a good point to make. And I think that's really cool that those guys were willing to help you out. And now, dude, you're fishing Major League Fishing. You're winning the U.S. Open. I mean, they're going to look back and tell those guys at breakfast one day, drinking a coffee, say, yeah, this one time, remember when I took Josh to that spot? Now look, he's winning all this money.
Well, dude, you broke it down perfectly. I mean, yeah, you got, if you're young and you're respectful and you treat others the right way, it's going to come back around for sure. And I think, there's definitely something to be learned from that.
I do feel karma's real. Like, I know in bass fishing in general, like if you do good, if you treat guys good on the water, you're going to be rewarded. It might not be instant, but I know some elite pros, some Major League Fishing pros that have done some really good things off the water, as far as helping high school anglers, helping college anglers, or just doing things out of pocket for small companies. And I see those guys winning money doing big things in tournaments, and sometimes I'm like, those little things, they add up. But
that's cool. Well, hopefully that's true, man. That's pretty cool for those guys. That's awesome.
Let's talk again about some baits here. Dude, I get off subject all the time. I'm just going crazy here. Someone asked a really good question. All right, so it's fall, getting close to winter, and water temperatures all over the country in the mid 50s to 60s. What are some of your go-to baits this time of year with that water temperature?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about the winter, to me anyways, is it really simplifies your bait selection, right? Like, you got baits that you just straight up have to take out of the boat because it's getting too cold. And when you get your waters down below 60, you're getting there, man. There's a lot of stuff that you probably don't need to be throwing anymore or even thinking about throwing. So, you get down into that zone, you're still, depending on your water clarity and stuff like that, an Alabama rig is a really good way to catch fish. Yep. In the fall and early winter. Crankbaits, I mean, you could crank all winter long. That's one of the reaction baits that you can continue throwing as it gets cold. Maybe a spinnerbait, maybe a vibrating jig, and then definitely jigs, just jigs in general, right? But if you just had a crankbait and a jig, just variations of crankbaits and jigs all winter, you do really well. And then one other bait I'll throw too, that's something I'm going to be doing a lot here over the next couple months, is a jigging spoon. If you live somewhere where the fish go deep, I spoon all winter long. It's one of my favorite ways to catch a lot of fish. So it's not for everywhere, not for everyone, but if you'd like to go out there deep, you're well into jigging spoon season too.
The one good thing about jigging spoon is, winter fishing can be slow, but you can catch everything in the lake on a jigging spoon. At least keep you from being bored, man. Like, I've got on some schools here on Kentucky Lake in the winter, and you vertically jig, and always use that War Eagle spoon. I mean, it don't look like nothing, but it just sinks so fast. And it's largemouth and a smallmouth, and it's white bass, and who knows, a crappie. And that's, I like that. Beach sitting there not getting a bite, and I think a lot of guys just overlook vertical jigging and spoon, even in the winter and even in the summer when it gets tough. That jigging spoon's really good.
It's fun, dude. It's out here. What we catch is big giant catfish on it.
Really?
It's pretty interesting. Yeah, we're doing the same thing. Largemouth crappie, yellow bass, and then you'll catch like a 40-pound flathead. And what happens after you catch that flathead is it's just all toast. You got to find another spot because it scares everything off, man.
Really?
That thing was probably sitting on the bottom below the fish the whole time. They never knew. But you pull a 40-pound flathead through the school, and they're gone, dude.
Dude, that's crazy. So, the spoon I love to throw is that Ben Parker Magnum spoon. That's a totally different deal. It's not a vertical because that spoon falls and then it cradles and then it shoots backwards. But that is the best flathead catfish bait I've ever used in my life. Oh my gosh, I've caught some giants on that thing. And they crush it. Like, when you got one. Like, the bass hit it hard, but when a flathead eats it, it about takes the rod out from you.
They're predators, man, and they think they're eating them a bass or a gizzard shad or a crappie or a white bass, and it's a piece of metal.
So let me ask you a question. We talk about crankbaits in the fall. Berkeley's got several really good ones. They got the Fritz side. They got multiple sizes. They've got the dredger, and then they have the digger. What's your kind of go-to crankbait as it comes in the fall, winter? Or are you the guy, I've got 4 cranking rods and I got 4 different style crankbaits on there?
Yeah, if I've just got one and I'm going shallow, it's that Fritz side 5. They've got a color called Kentucky Blue that's really good. It's a really pretty shad pattern.
Yes.
Now they've got the HD series, and they've got like a threadfin shad. It's awesome. It's really, really pretty in the water. And that's my one go-to if I'm cranking shallow. If it's one of those things where you really think you're going to be cranking a lot, you got multiple ones. The dredgers are really good deep diving crankbaits. They've got a new one called a Money Badger.
I've been seeing some stuff on it. It looks really unique.
Very unique. You can't call it a wiggle wart. You can't call it a DT6. It's its own deal.
It's kind of a hybrid. Like it's almost like a rock crawler / wiggle wart, but it almost even got some JDM looks to it. Like it's really an original looking bait.
It casts well. It's got a super wide aggressive wobble. But it still works good in cold water. They've got, I think, three or 4 sizes. But no, it's good. I've been fishing it for about 1.5 years since, before it was out, and I really like it. And now it's kind of a time of year where it's starting to shine too, especially when you get a little dirtier water. I'm not necessarily throwing that in the clearest water because it is such a hard action, but you get any stain to the water, it works good. But man, if I could only have one, it's still Fritz side 5. It's one of the best crankbaits of all time.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Berkeley credit where it's due. You see my shirt, but that Fritz side's a bad mammer jammer. I don't know what about it. It's a lot thinner. Like there's flat side. There's flat side crankbaits out there. You got the 6-inch flat 75. You've got all the balsa flat side crankbaits, but that Fritz side's a really thin bait. Like, if you look at most flat sides, they're not that thin. And that one's just, like, borderline paper thin at times compared to other stuff. But it casts good. And that's one of the properties of flat side crankbaits most guys do not like. It's hard to cast them on bait casting gear. Where the Fritz side, you can do it. And it's not the feel that makes it better in that fall, winter, early spring when it's cold, because last thing you want to do is fight with a bait when it's cold out there. You don't even feel like being there. But
I agree.
In your opinion, what do you think makes that Fritz side so good? Is it the bill angle? Is it there's a lot of good things going on with that.
Yeah, and for me, I've caught a lot of fish cranking, right? I love deep cranking, but I'm not the world's best. Like, I'm not a great shallow to medium crankbait fisherman. So for me, having a bait that I have a lot of confidence in like that's easy to fish is a really big deal, because I'm not the guy that grew up in the Carolinas or the Ozarks shallow and medium cranking when now's the situation that I need to pull this one out or this one or this one. And I could do that with other techniques, but with medium and shallow cranking, it's just never been my deal. So I need a bait that I know is a great bait. I know I can tie it on and fish it easily and catch them. And that's it for me. And you brought up the castability. That's huge, because no matter what, when you're in a crankbait situation, the fish are sitting at a lot of times you'll notice the fish are sitting at a certain level, certain depth, right? And you've got to be able to make the cast to get your bait coming through the strike zone where those fish are sitting at, right? And if you have a bait that you can cast consistently and throw it X amount of feet off the bank, throw it X amount of feet out away from the boat to get it into that strike zone and keep it there as long as possible, you're going to be catching a lot more fish because you're really efficient. If you're trying to throw a balsa, flat side, you cast it and the wind takes it that way, wasted cast. The wind takes it this way, wasted cast. You don't cast it far enough, it doesn't get down into the strike zone, wasted cast all day long. You waste 50 casts through the course of the day, dude. Whereas with this, you might make 10 bad casts all day long.
Yeah, so I'm a big balsa crankbait guy, but it does not hurt my feelings when you say that stuff because it's absolutely true. If you're fishing an event such as Major League Fishing, now they did just change to the 5 fish limit, and I'll ask you about that in a minute. But you're trying to make casts, and you got a windy day in a balsa bait, you're not going to be very accurate. If you're just out there fishing for fun and you're not derbying up, dude, balsa's probably the way to go, or maybe you don't have a lot of wind. But for you, there's a benefit right there when you're trying to get every fish counts when you're fishing those MLF events. There's a big plus on the castability of that bait.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I'm definitely not knocking balsa because there's a lot of killer balsa baits, but like just for ease of use and then consistency too, right? Like these run straight out of the package, dang near every one of them, and it's almost impossible to knock it out of tune. Whereas again, if my crankbait is slightly out of tune, I'm not going to notice it like someone who's really, really good at doing that. I'm just going to keep fishing it and say, dang, dude, I'm not catching much anymore. What's going on? Yeah. Like if it's not doing circles in the water, I'm not going to notice. So like for this thing to be able to run consistent, it helps me a lot too.
So let me ask you this. Now that Major League Fishing, and I'm not an anti-MLF. I'm not one of those guys, no drama. From my standpoint, how's that going to change your bait selection, your tackle presentation? Are you going to do anything different, or are you just going to fish different, maybe a different style, different kind of areas? Or are you not going to hunt the big numbers? Or are you just going to try to catch the best fibers, or anything different you're going to do from a preparation tackle standpoint?
Yeah, it's a real interesting thing, and if it was a 1 pound minimum like we had our first year, like they have in the team series and cups, it's a monster difference in how you fish and the baits you throw, how you break it down. The 2 pound minimum, it brings things tighter, and it's going to depend on the tournament, right? Like I personally, I'm glad they did this. I'm a fan of it. It's going to open up more opportunities to throw different baits. You never, of course, it's the first thing you think of is a swim bait because it's a big bait and you don't get as many bites on it. But that's going to come back into play a lot more. But even just sometimes simple, dude, you're going, you're fishing the bank and you're pitching around, and your choice is, do you throw a jig or do you throw a small Texas rig creature bait? And now you can throw that jig again. You know what I mean? You could patient. I think you're going to see a jig have a little bit of resurgence this year. And it's just going to depend on the tournament. It depends on the body of water. In the one thing, if you look at numbers of fish that get caught in the pre-spawn, late winter pre-spawn tournaments, guys don't catch that many fish. You go to Lake Eufaula in February or March, you have a good day of fishing. Every fish counts, or 5 fish. You caught 8 fish all day, and they're good ones, right? You're fishing for big pre-spawn fish. So you won't see much of a difference, to me anyways, strategy-wise, bait-wise, as much early in the year. But you're going to get into the spring and then post-spawn. You got a tournament now. Instead of throwing a wacky rig, you're throwing a frog. You're throwing a topwater. You get into the summertime and you're lead fishing. Every dude was throwing a drop shot. Now you're throwing, crazy. Again, that big spoon's back in play. The big crankbait's back in play. Stuff like that. So it brings a lot of stuff back into play. The drop shot's never going to go away. You might catch an 8-pounder on a drop shot, and you might need it when those fish don't want to bite the big spoon. But at least you're going to be back to doing a lot of the stuff, the more niche-y stuff that's cool. in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's actually going to open up a lot more variation and different contrasting of styles and technique that, we've kind of been missing a little bit before. Like, I don't have a problem with MLF. I like most of the anglers over there. It was its own format. The only thing I would say is, like, man, the techniques were bottlenecked, because everybody's trying to catch numbers. Now, you go back to, we got to catch the best 5 all day. You're going to have guys chunking that big glide bait. At some event, it's going to happen.
Sure.
So speaking of swim baits, are you a swim bait guy? Have you got into that whole universe of swim baits, or are you just kind of like paddle tails, soft bait guy?
Nowadays, it is the paddle tail, the stuff that you can actually throw in a tournament. When I was younger and had a little more time on my hands, I was all about, going out and hunting for a big fish with it. Our lakes here around Phoenix, they stock trout, and you got big giant bass. They eat them in the wintertime. So it's not Southern California, but it's good. I mean, there's a lot of good big giant swim bait fishing around here.
Good in Arizona, like. There's a guy I know, his name's Justin C. You ever heard of Justin C?
Yeah, I know Justin. Yep.
So he started.
Good guy.
He makes this bait right here. He sent me this. This is called a shizzer. This is an Arizona swim bait. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I don't have one of those.
But man, he sent me pics of this thing years ago, and dude was catching like 8s and 10s. He said, "This is all Arizona stuff." He said. And,
he knows how to do it. He's good. And there's your cult-like group of swim bait guys out here. And the thing is, when I was doing it when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I'm 34 now, so 15 years ago, then there weren't as many guys that knew what to do, so the fish weren't as pressured, and right. You got only 2 or 3 lakes that are really good. So like, you get 100 guys that figure out how to go catch those fish. The fish really feel that pressure, right? Mm-hmm. And we saw that, I think, over the last several years. But when I was doing it was when the Huddleston got really big, and I caught a lot of my big swim bait fish on a Huddleston. Fishing it, casting it out over structure, letting it fall to the bottom, and then slow crawling it back, like just slow rolling it back to the boat. The bite would almost feel like a jig bite. You're crawling that thing, and you'd feel thump, thump, thump like a jig. And you set the hook and you got them. Now the glide bait thing is really big, and I'm not a good glide bait fisherman. It is hard in a tournament situation to make that thing work. And dude, I just love fishing tournaments so much. Like, yeah, everything's tournament centric. So it's been hard for me to find a way to work that in consistently. There's tournaments where you see it play a big factor. And the guys that are good at it, Polnick, Zaldane, guys like that, they'll make it work at the right time, but it's not as much my thing as some of those other Western guys.
Well, I just happen to have a couple Berkeley swim baits here. I want your thoughts.
Let's see what they are.
So I have the gilly here. So this really isn't a true swim bait though. This is kind of a hybrid flipping bait / swim bait / creature bait. You could do a lot of different things with this. Have you fished the gilly much?
Yeah, and it's a jack of all trades bait. My favorite thing to do with it is bed fishing. It's a great bed fishing bait because it looks like a bluegill, and it comes in a good size where fish can come up and eat it.
Right.
We've got it in a bunch of sizes, but like that 3-inch is great on beds. And you could rig it weedless. So just like you're rigging up a creature bait, weedless on a Texas rig works really good for that. But you can rig it on a swim bait hook, crawl it through the shallows, burn it through the shallows. It's really good. The other time I like it is like post spawn. When those fish are on bluegill beds, you got fry garters. You just got a lot of fish up shallow, a lot of bluegill still up shallow. That's my other good time to use it. And I haven't done this a lot myself, but I thought it looked really interesting in some videos that I've seen. Is a lot of guys are threading it on a vibrating jig. You take the skirt off vibrating jig, and you take that smaller size, that 3-inch, and thread it on there, and you just got a vibrating bluegill. Kind of cool looking.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about that. So another swim bait now. We talked about bass tricks earlier. So the OG, and I could make a really compelling video on why that's one of the most influential swim baits ever. But years ago, Berkeley got on the train and they made a hollow belly. and it was really freaking good. Like there was a Bass Tricks, and then you had the Berkeley Hollow Belly, then you had all these people trying to copy it. The Berkeley one, there's a cult following for the old ones, but I've got some new ones, and I have caught a lot of fish on the new Hollow Belly. I think it runs good. They got multiple sizes. You get that power bait scent in there. I don't know if that matters or not, but do you ever throw the Hollow Belly?
For sure, and the Bass Tricks was definitely the OG, but Berkeley was right there when it was about 2007 when it was getting crazy, and that that Hollow Belly has been around since then, and it's awesome. It went away for a little while, and it kind of stunk, and it's been back now for, I don't know, maybe 5 years, something like that. But I really like it. It's hard to beat just the old school throwing on a jig head, thread it onto a jig head, and fish it that way. But I'll throw it on an Alabama rig sometimes. We were talking about A-rigging, when you're trying to get a bigger bait on the A-rig. And then same thing, the vibrating jig just works so well. That works. You thread that thing on a vibrating jig with a little bit bigger hook, like a heavy one, like a 3/4 ounce or something like that. And that's a good way to catch some pigs too, especially if you're fishing around grass, fishing that thing through hydrilla, stuff like that. I mean, anywhere that you got gizzard shad in a lake, those big ones are looking for that bigger bait.
Someone in here says the Berkeley Ripple Shad is a sleeper. I remember that one.
I like it. Yeah, that's more from the walleye world, but it's a little fish catcher too. We got a few different ones. We got Champ Swimmer, Jordan Lee Champ Swimmer.
Yeah, man, I got some of them too. My son picked these out over at Academy, and I haven't fished them yet, but they're his, so I'll tell you, we'll fish them when you want to. But they look good. So what's cool is they got those HD designs on some of the baits.
Yep, that's really cool. They've had that for a little while. The baits are basically painted. They look really good. And then that I like that Champ Swimmer as like a swim jig trailer because it's really, that plastic's real tough, and it holds together really well. There was John Hoyer is a walleye pro sponsored by Berkeley, and he just won, I don't know if it was a regular season or if it was the championship for the big walleye trail, but he actually won it on that Champ Swimmer right there.
Dude, that's crazy. No lead involved in that one, I'm just assuming.
No, he did it legit.
Yeah. That's a crazy thing. I haven't ever talked about it on my channel, and I really don't want to because I just think everyone just assumes all these, rednecks and they're fishing and stuff. And I don't really think it was that good for the sport, to be honest, because it went so viral and so many people, even news reporters, I was like, man, y'all just making everything sound terrible. Like, this does not happen all the time. But,
I cringe when I see it now because it has every update.
I couldn't even get on Facebook. Like, every day at work, somebody's like, "Did you see about them walleye cheaters?"
Yeah, the non-fishermen are the ones that bring it up, right? Like, we're all tapped out from it, but yeah exactly.
Let's talk about some more. What are some Berkeley baits, or it doesn't matter if it's Berkeley, whatever. What are some underrated baits you think need to get a little bit more love that you like?
Yeah, let's think about that. I got a wall.
I see you got Havoc back there. You may.
Yep.
I made the comment the other night. I like the Havoc Pit Boss a little bit better than the Power Bait Pit Boss.
Why is that?
I like the plastic a little bit better.
Interesting. See, I'm such a believer in scent now. After
really,
it took me a while, dude. For the scent thing, it just took me years to realize how much of a difference it makes. And now I'm so sold on scent that I got them behind me just because I'm a pack rat and I just don't organize and clean enough. But dude, all I throw is the Power Bait one now, and I just think scent's a big help. But did you think the plastic was softer before?
Yeah, I just felt like it held on my hook a little bit better. It might be right here.
Okay.
I've got some Havoc Pit Bosses. I think the Pit Boss is an awesome flipping bait. I know some guys that's all they use. I'll put it, I've done one of the dreaded top 5 baits video, but way back in the day.
Nice.
But that's one of my favorite flipping baits. If you said, Kevin, you're going to go to Choke Canyon, it's a flipping bait, I'm going to take some Pit Bosses with me.
Nice.
It's just,
yeah.
But I like the Havoc ones. And there's a lot of, the Havoc bottom hopper, good bait. That's how I heard about it. But I understand, marketing and big companies and power bait sells, man. When a guy thinks of Berkeley, he doesn't usually think of Havoc. He thinks of power bait. He's all about the scent. And I do agree with you. I think there's something to it, like TVA lakes, August, hot July, fishing brush piles. There's times a 10-inch power worm's the only worm they touch. And I think it's something about that power bait. I mean, a blue flake power worm, dude, that sucker's deadly in the summer.
yeah, it's caught some bass, man. I'm trying to think of some other ones that, it's kind of, people are learning more and more about it, but dude, an awesome worm is the Magnum hitworm.
Yes.
Have you thrown that one?
I have. It's a pretty good worm.
So, I mean, it's just, you got the hitworm, it's 4.5 inch. The Magnum hitworm is about 7 inches. And any situation you would throw, I don't drop shot it, but I throw it on a shaky head and a Nico rig.
That's how I've thrown it on.
Killer.
I threw it on a shaky head. So a big deal here was always that Zoom Magnum trick worm. So it's very similar, a little bit different body shape, but it's kind of got that fatter profile. And so many guys are throwing, weenie worms and just a trick worm style or small worm on a shaky head. I feel like that thicker body, a little different profile, you get a lot of bites on it. And I'm not talking putting a 1/2 ounce head on it. I'm old school. I throw a shaky on the lightest weight I can get away with. So I'll throw like a mag trick worm or something like you just said on like 1/4 ounce out 18, 20 feet deep, because I just feel you get a few more bites with that lighter weight. That's just me.
Makes sense.
I'm also not a pro either, so always keep
a lot more about Kentucky Lake than most pros, I promise.
Let's see here. I had another question. All right, critical gravy. So I had Matt Robertson on here last week. Me and Matt went fishing about a month ago, and he crushed me on the new Berkeley spinnerbait.
Nice.
Tell me about it. Have you thrown the new Berkeley spinnerbait?
Yeah.
I know you did a little IG video talking about the color on the blades.
Yeah, man. So this is the one I was throwing yesterday. Just the 1/2 ounce compact. It's got cool features. I mean, the most obvious thing that stands out to me is the hook is a lot different. It's got a really stout, almost O'Shaughnessy style bend in the hook, but the hook goes so far back in the skirt. Like typically that hook in a normal spinnerbait would be about up here, somewhere up here. This hook, I'm terrible at keeping this thing in the camera, is all the way down here. So you almost don't, I mean, dude, if you threw a trailer hook, it would be crazy. Like it's almost like having a trailer hook. I love the hook, power bait skirt, a lot of good styles. But yeah, this is what I was throwing yesterday, and I talked about it in that post, but the water was clear, but we had a rainy, nasty day. And that's the day for the painted blades. You ever mix that in yourself?
Yeah, so it's kind of a spring deal for me. Like I'll throw the double whites. I've got some white and pink. Believe it or not, I got a white and pink one. It's
interesting.
Freaking amazing.
Okay.
But that's kind of a spring deal for me. But I'm out filming Mr. Menendez the other day, and guess what? He's got white blades on his spinnerbait. And then I see your posts, and you got white blades, and I'm thinking, man, I've been doing this wrong, man. It needs to be a fall deal. So what's the deal with your painted blades in the fall? Is it a reaction bite, or is it just something different out there?
For me, more so than the fall, it's just literally the sky conditions. You know what I mean?
Right.
When I go smallmouth fishing, I love the painted blades. But for me, I can't tell you if it's better in the fall or spring or what. But the fish were on shad. The sky is dark, so you don't get any flash off of your painted blades, and or off of your nickel blades on a cloudy day. So right. The painted blade is just a lot easier to see. It's more of a weather conditions than a spring or fall thing. But it could be. I just don't know if it is.
It's from my buddy Brad Kell. He was pouring some swim baits today. Texted him to me. He said, "Congrats on Josh's win. Hopefully, he got to spend some time with Rick Pierce after the one tournament."
Yeah, I did get to chat with Rick, and man, it's pretty cool how much that guy does for the Western fishermen. A lot of folks back east may not know it, but no one supports the West like that guy does. And he sponsors the circuits, gives prize boats, and I'm a real big fan of Rick Pierce. I think he's a great guy.
Yeah, I know Brad's got a bass cat, and it's really fast. Trust me, I've been running down the lake behind that guy, and I didn't. He was gone.
That's funny.
Here you go. What ribbon tail worm do you like? Are you just a straight up power worm, or they got the kingtail worm?
Yeah, so I've always been a power worm guy, still am. Um, the kingtail is an awesome bait, and same thing. I'll bust it out in a situation where there's a lot of pressure or whatever. But for me, the power worm is just such a killer. I've got so much confidence in it. I grew up throwing that thing. I night fished a lot growing up, and I caught so many bass on that 10-inch power worm at night. And then during the day, just throwing the watermelons and green pumpkins, the plum. It's a killer bait. That 10 inches, the 8-inch is awesome. I don't know if you guys have thrown the 8-inch much, but it's a cool in between size. Yeah. The 10's awesome, but that 8 is a really nice in between fish catcher.
Well, dude, I used to love the 12-inch one. Back in the day,
interesting
heyday of Tennessee River, Kentucky Lake, they come out with that 12-inch one, and it was a little bit fatter. And the tail really actually wasn't as long, but it was a big, bulky worm. And all of a sudden, I couldn't find them. They discontinued. And I was like, oh, no way. So I went and bought every plum one I could find up. But they came in packs. They're only like 6 in a pack compared to like many other companies, is 10 or 12. But now they're making them again. You can find them on Tackle Warehouse. But I bought some of those 8-inch ones last year. That's a really versatile worm. That's a good worm if you want to go fish a pond. You want to go fish a lake. It doesn't matter if you're on the east, west, north, south. That's a really good size.
Yep, for sure. The U.S. Open was won on that 8-inch a couple years ago. Tim Klinger.
Dude, that guy's a hammer, too.
He is.
Here's a good question. Does Josh have a Berkeley Magic Swimmer swim bait that Sebille made?
Dude, that's one of the I know that bait is like same thing, cult following.
Yep.
Like that's the one bait from Sebille that was like, we got to keep this thing. And I know it's amazing, especially around herring lakes, but I've never made a cast with it. I'm not the guy to talk about that one. I got to be honest, but I know how awesome that bait can be in the right person's hands.
Yeah, I know about it, but it's not one like I desire to go buy, I guess, because where I live.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it, right?
I keep my collection really to the stuff that has value or I know catches them. Like you'll never see me buying $1,000 of drop shot baits. Maybe just a few of them that I know I use, but I'm a tackle junkie. That's a problem. Like if I was win the $1 billion Powerball, you might as well just fly me to Tackle Warehouse. I'll be good there. Anything else you want to talk about, Justin? Any other baits or techniques or some stuff that's flying under the radar or some of your favorites that we need to know about?
Yeah, I wanted to – we touched on the Spinnerbait. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I've been talking about drop shotting all month after that tournament, and I'm happy to do it. But, the last bait that I'll kind of bring up for fishing when you're on the vertical Spinnerbait that's pretty neat is the Berkeley Snap Jig. Now, this was started for walleye fishing, but it works really well here. So picture when you're on these vertical jigging fish. Everyone knows about the hammered flat spoons that guys fish. And then the ice jigs have gotten popular. They've been around. Guys have been using them for 20, 30, 40 years, in this region. But they've kind of made it countrywide over the last few years. That ice jig's gotten pretty popular when you're on a Spinnerbait. The problem with that is the way the hooks are designed on that thing, you lose a lot of fish. It's got a tiny treble hook at the bottom of it, and all the different ones are the same. Not one specifically. They're all kind of like this. They've got these weird little hooks on the front and back. And I mean, you'll catch a lot of fish, great baits, but you lose a lot of fish too, just because they eat it. You're jigging that thing and they come up and eat it weird, and thing's got a lot of weight to it, so they start thrashing at the side of the boat and they come off. But that snap jig's really unique. It's basically a jig head with 2 wings on it, and the wings give it the same darting action when you're jigging as an ice jig. But what you do with this thing is you take like a 3-inch soft plastic bait and thread it on. So that's your bait. Instead of being one solid lead bait, you got a jig head with wings and then a soft plastic bait on it. It works the same way, but my hookup to landing percentage is a lot better because you got one good jig head hook sticking out of the top. So you just peg them a lot better with that jig head hook than you do with like the little treble.
I'm going to pull this thing up here. tackle warehouse. Here we go. Gonna pull this thing up. What you're talking about is this guy right here, and this is just. Does color matter on this snap jig, or just what's on the back?
Yeah, any of the shad colors, man. And you can put a treble on it. I usually don't mess with that. But like that guy right there, that's what I throw. I'd put either a Galt minnow works good on it. Also that Champ minnow, that Jordan Lee Champ minnow works real good because, again, you're looking for sometimes a little more firm plastic that's just going to hold. You get on fish with that technique, you might go 2 hours without catching a bass and then catch 20 in 30 minutes. And when you're on them, you don't want to be messing around, change your baits out. So that firmer plastic on that Champ minnow works really well.
Gotcha. I see it's got that, cone little bait keeper right there. And that's something I noticed on a lot of Berkley stuff, like that new Spinnerbait has that coned keeper on there, and it holds plastic really well.
Yep.
All right. I just wanted people to see what you exactly were talking about so they could get that visual. So what's your drop shot setup? Like somebody asked, I want to know Josh's drop shot setup.
Yeah, so as I'm talking,
you got your own Josh Bertrand drop shot rod, don't you?
Yeah, man, yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
Hey, real quick, I'm going to unplug my mic and plug it back in. Take me 10 seconds here.
Uh-oh. He's still muted.
Okay, sorry guys. Yep. When I do my podcast, this happens. I get over an hour and things start to glitch out. You talked about low budget live setup over there like Luke Duncan. Mine's even lower. So we're good to go though now. But my drop shot setup, I helped Abu design a rod this year. It's pretty cool. Pretty lucky to be able to do it. It's a 610 medium light. They call it the Pro Series. So it's one of the 14 or 16 rods that the pros design. But I like that medium light. Sometimes I will use a medium. If I'm on the Great Lakes throwing a 1/2 ounce weight, fishing in big waves for big smallmouth, it's nice to have a little extra control. But you get a lot of advantages to drop shotting with a medium light. The biggest advantage is the extra sensitivity you get. Right. The weight of the rod itself is lighter, and having a little softer tip is going to help you feel those really light bites. And the deeper you're fishing, the lighter the bite's going to feel. So big fan of medium light for drop shot. But the other thing is, when you're using light line, if you ever have to go down to 6-pound test, a medium action rod, things get sketchy again when you get around the boat with big fish, even if you got good drag on your spinning reels. That softer rod just
it does a lot of work for you.
It does, man. It gives you that extra breathing room. If you have a nick in your line or the fish makes a crazy run, it's going to allow that rod to absorb a lot of that pressure and not break your line. So I love a medium light, and so I've gone back and forth. You'll see me use a medium in a few situations, but more often than not, I like that medium light. And then I'm using just like a Revo 30 reel from Abu Garcia, 6 or 8 pound test Berkley X5 braid. I love the X5, and my weights depend. I'm a big fan of tungsten weights. They show up really well on live scope. You can feel a lot of what's going on, and then same hooks just totally depend on whatever bait I'm fishing.
That's the setup there. That's what we're wanting. I'm gonna take a little bit of notes on that as far as the medium light versus medium. I got a Daiwa. It's Cody Myers' Daiwa rod, which I like. Cody, he's a great dude.
He knows what's up.
Yeah. So I felt when I bought it, I was like, well, I can't go wrong if Cody Myers says it's a good drop shot rod. But I've heard a lot of good things about the new Berkley Signature Series rods, different pros and whatnot. And I used to use the old Veritas, the white Veritas, the OG ones. I'd always heard the color on the Veritas was designed after a BMW sports car. Like that color white was the same color white they used on a BMW.
That's cool. I could see that, dude. It's got that kind of like a little bit of a holographic look to it, a little bit.
Let's see here. I thought I had a good question. I said, You covered. Someone says your favorite spinning reels. Do you customize any of your reels, or do you keep them kind of stock?
That's a good question. I don't go crazy. I don't do anything to mine. They're pretty good out of the box. The Revo MGX is my favorite. That's kind of my go-to. But yeah, I don't really do too much to them. Really, I'm actually brutal when it comes to maintaining my reels and stuff. So, just pretty much use it and abuse it.
What I know you've got a podcast. What's the name of your podcast, Josh? How long have you had that thing going?
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up, man.
Yeah, man, we gotta plug it, man. We gotta get the fishing juice out to everybody.
I told Matt Pengrack when I went on Bass Talk Live. He actually brought it up right away, like the first 30 seconds I was on, and I said, "All right, dude, I gotta go now. I got to plug my podcast, so I'm out of here, man." But
I'm no Pengrack. He's a good dude, though. I like Matt.
I love him, dude. So it's called Angler's Happy Hour, and it's every show is a little bit different. We've been doing it for a little bit over 2 years. It's myself and two of my best friends, Rob and Nick. Rob's like an experienced Western professional fisherman and guide. Nick fishes for fun, but he's the comedian of the show. Just makes light of everything, jokes about a lot. And we just talk trash to each other. It's called Angler's Happy Hour because it's just like the conversation you'd have after fishing, at the restaurant or the bar or, at the campfire, right? So we do a lot of smack talk. We have some guests on, and same thing, the guests really vary. It's fishing related stuff, but not so much nuts and bolts fishing as much as like the crazy stuff that happened on the lake, the crazy thing you saw, the crazy thing you heard. A lot of just our own follies, but it's a good excuse for us. We try to do it once a week. The first year we did it every week. And then it's, now it's like twice a month. We do our best to keep it consistent, but we've done, I think, about 130 episodes so far.
Dude, it's wild.
Yeah, and it's on all the podcast platforms. If I was smart, I'd have it on video like you, but it's just audio. So if you listen on iTunes or Spotify, you can find it there.
Well, so like I get the opposite. I stream all the time, and people will be like, "Man, can you put this on iTunes or Spotify?" And I've got to do that. That's one of my goals this weekend is to get this one and the one I did last week and start putting my streams into an audio form, because there's a lot of people that maybe they're driving. It's easier to pull it up on Spotify or iTunes than log in to YouTube and then find the one they want to listen to and all that. And it takes less data to pull audio than it does the audio and video. So I think once you get a fan base, I don't think it matters if you're video and audio, but I do think audio is the way to go. But I like the format of your show because I've always said people always want to film on the water and all that cool stuff. The stuff that people want is the stuff people talk about at the hotel, after the tournament, at the boat ramp, at the dinner table, or over across beers. That's when the juicy good stuff comes out, the razzing each other, or talking about this guy did this on the water, I can't believe this.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the stuff people want.
It's fun, man, and there's a place for everything, right? Like, I mean, you can learn so much from watching your streams, and people might not learn as much from watching ours, but they'll definitely laugh a little bit, getting bed bugs from a hotel.
Oh man.
Just that type of stuff, man. Just like I said, a lot of our follies and other fishermen's follies too, but we had guys talking about sinking their boats and just all kinds of random stuff. So yeah, feel free to check it out, guys. It's we try to do it once a week. It's an hour long. It's on all those platforms.
Dude, it's hard for me to stream once a week. So when you're like, man, I don't do it that often. I'm like, dude,
it's
I
hard.
feel that. Like, I'm a working blue collar guy. I mean, I work 40 to 60 hours a week, sometimes more, and I get burnt out. Like when you've been doing video and you regular working and you just want to go fishing, it's tough. Sometimes I'm like, man, I really feel like streaming. Sometimes I have to take a mental break, but I enjoy it. Like, I like getting on here and talking with new guys and talking to people in chat, and I appreciate you coming on. And if you want to do it again, man, maybe this spring we'll talk some spring baits and spring techniques. Maybe we'll do it after you win another tournament, because
dude,
if you're streaming with me, that means you've won a tournament.
I love it. Well, yeah, hopefully that happens again soon, but definitely don't feel like you need to wait to give me a call, man. If you'd love to, I'd love to do it again. Like I said, an honor to be on, man, and yeah, stay in touch. It was great to get to meet you a little bit more too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Guys, do me a huge favor. Smash the like on this video. Leave a comment after the stream. Go follow Josh on what's your social media? Is
Josh Bertrand Fishing everywhere. Also got a YouTube channel I started recently. So
yeah, man, go ahead, give him a sub.
Now.
We got to get them subs and views up for him. So
yep.
Super nice guy. Great education with some of the Berkeley baits, and I love the drop shot info and the ice jig info was juice. So Josh, I'm going to get out of here. If you need anything, holler at me. And I got to go edit up the description. I'm going to link some of Josh's baits, his rods, and his podcast in the description. Guys, you guys have a wonderful evening.
All right. Thanks, man.